Welcome back to House of the Wolf Horror, friends. Tonight we descend into the forgotten dark where ancient giants stir, frostbitten angels wait below, and the Chenoo's hunger echoes through the frozen valleys. Three tales of myth and bone, and of discovery and dread. Stay close to the fire, because the ground remembers. I've mapped caves on 4 continents, squeezed through fissures barely wider than my shoulders, and hung from ropes over pits so deep the light never reached the bottom. But nothing prepared me for the new system we found beneath Merrimack Caverns. It started with a collapse. A small one, a harmless one, a section of old tourist tunnel that gave way after a spring flood, revealing a narrow crack in the limestone wall. The Park Service called our university team to assess the stability. We expected a simple survey. Instead, we found a void. A massive one. A chamber so large our laser scanners couldn't find the far wall. A chamber that shouldn't exist. And a draft. Cold, steady, and unnatural, flowing from somewhere deep inside. I remembered the moment we first squeezed through the crack. My helmet light cut through the dust, illuminating a slope of broken rock leading into darkness. Jesus, murmured our geologist Marcus. This is huge. Bigger than huge, I said. This is a whole new system. Behind us, our documentary intern Samantha lifted her camera. Rolling, she said, her voice echoing faintly. Dr. Myrick, can you describe what we're seeing? I smiled despite myself. She was young, eager, bright-eyed, the kind of student who reminded me why I love this work. We're looking at a newly exposed karst chamber, I said. Untouched, unmapped, potentially millions of years old. Samantha panned her camera across the darkness. It feels colder, she said. She was right. The air pouring from the crack is at least 20 degrees colder than the surrounding cavern. That should have been our first warning. But we're scientists. We're curious. We went anyway. The chamber was cathedral-sized, a vast dome of limestone, dolomite, glittering with mineral deposits. Our lights barely reached the ceiling. The floor sloped downward into a wide tunnel. Look at this, Marcus said, kneeling beside a cluster of stalagmites. These formations, they're sheared off. I crouched beside him. He was right. The stalagmites weren't broken naturally. They were snapped. Cleanly, deliberately. Seismic activity? Samantha asked. No, I said. These breaks are too uniform. Then what did it, she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't know. And because the cold draft was getting stronger, we followed the tunnel. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Our breath fogged. Frost formed on the limestone walls. My fingers numbed inside my gloves. This is impossible, Marcus muttered. There's no geothermal reason for this temperature drop. Maybe there's an underground river, I said. There'd be humidity, he said. This is a dry cold. Samantha shivered. It feels like winter. She wasn't wrong. The tunnel widened into a second chamber, smaller than the first, but stranger. The walls were carved, not by water, not by erosion, by hand. Massive hands. The carvings were crude but unmistakable. Humanoid figures towering over smaller ones, arms raised, eyes hollowed. Some held spears, some held stones, some held nothing at all. But all of them were giants. Holy shit, Marcus whispered. This is prehistoric artwork. No, I said softly. This is older. Samantha stepped closer, filming. What do you mean? I traced a finger along one of the carvings. A giant figure with elongated arms and a head too large for its body. These proportions, they're not human. Neanderthal, Marcus asked. No, I said. Something else. Samantha zoomed in on the carvings. It looks biblical, she said. I frowned. Biblical? You know, she said, the Nephilim, the giants from Genesis. There were giants in the earth in those days. Marcus snorted. Come on, that's mythology. Maybe, Samantha said, but these carvings. A sound cut her off. A deep, distant thud. Then another and another. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Coming from deeper in the cave, we froze. The footsteps grew louder, closer, rhythmic and deliberate. Marcus swallowed hard. Is that a cave-in? No, I whispered. Cave-ins don't walk. We killed our lights. The footsteps continued. Slow, heavy, and measured. My heart pounded so hard I thought the sound would give us away. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a breath. A long, low, rattling exhale that echoed through the chamber. Samantha's hand found mine in the dark. I squeezed it. The breath came again, closer. I felt the air move, cold, sharp, and unnatural. Something was in the chamber with us. Something big. Something alive. I held my breath. The thing exhaled again. The cold deepened. My skin prickled and my lungs burned. Then a sound like stone scraping against stone. A shift of weight. A low, guttural rumble. And then the footsteps moved away. Slowly. Deliberately. Until they faded into the depths. We didn't move for a full minute. Finally, Marcus whispered, "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer, because I knew. Not logically, not scientifically, but instinctively. Something ancient lived in this cave. Something that wasn't human. Something that wasn't extinct. We retreated, slowly, quietly, and carefully. When we reached the first chamber, we didn't speak. We didn't breathe. We didn't look back. Only when we crawled through the crack into the tourist tunnel did we finally exhale. Samantha collapsed against the wall, shaking. What was that? She whispered. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Probably. Probably an echo, he said weakly. Or a rockfall. Or... Marcus, I said, stop. He looked at me. I shook my head. This wasn't geology. He swallowed. No, he said, it wasn't. Samantha hugged her camera to her chest. Are we going back in? She asked. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no, but the scientist in me, the part that had spent 20 years chasing the unknown, whispered yes. We need a larger team, I said. More equipment, thermal imaging, seismic sensors, and we need to notify the Park Service. Marcus nodded. And the university. And the state, I said. And maybe the feds, he said. Samantha looked between us. You think this is big? I met her eyes. This could be the biggest discovery in North American archaeology. I didn't say the rest. It could also be the last. We returned to the surface. The sunlight felt wrong. Too bright, too warm, too normal. I kept expecting the cold to follow us out of the cave, but it didn't. Not yet. We filed our report. We requested reinforcements. We prepared for a full-scale expedition. But that night, as I lay in my bunk in the ranger station, I heard something outside. A low, distant rumble. Like footsteps. Heavy ones. Coming from the direction of the cave. I sat up, my heart pounding. The rumble grew louder, closer. Then it stopped. Silence. I held my breath. A moment later, something exhaled. Long and low, right outside the window. I didn't move, breathe, or even sleep. Not that night. Not ever again. Not in the same way. Because I knew the truth. We hadn't discovered the cave. The cave had discovered us. And whatever lived inside of it, it was awake. The next morning, the reinforcements arrived. 3 more researchers from the university, 2 Park Service rangers, a structural engineer, a biologist, and a representative from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources who introduced himself as Agent Kessler and didn't smile once. He wasn't dressed like a field agent or bureaucrat. He wore a plain black jacket, boots, carried a plain black case he never let out of his sight. Your report was concerning, he said, as we gathered near the entrance to the new fissure. Unstable formations, unexplained temperature gradients, possible hazardous wildlife. Hazardous wildlife. That was one way to put it. Marcus shot me a look. Samantha kept her camera lowered, but rolling. We need to proceed carefully, I said. There's something down there, something alive. Kessler's expression didn't change. Then let's go meet it. We descended in 2 teams. Team A, me, Marcus, Samantha, and Kessler. Team B, the biologist, the engineer, and the 2 rangers. Team B would map the upper chamber and set up monitoring equipment. Team A would push deeper into the system, back to the carved chamber and beyond. The cold hit us immediately. Not a draft or a breeze, a presence. The kind of cold that feels aware. Samantha shivered behind me. It's worse today, she whispered. She was right. The temperature had dropped another 10 degrees since yesterday. Frost coated the limestone, and our breath fogged constantly. Kessler didn't react. He didn't even zip up his jacket. Proceed, he said. We did. We carved. The carved chamber looked different in the morning light. Not physically. The carvings were the same, the walls were the same, but the atmosphere had changed. The air felt heavier, the cold felt deeper, the silence felt expectant. Marcus knelt beside one of the carvings. These weren't made with stone tools, he said. The grooves are too deep, too smooth. Metal, Samantha asked. No, he said. Stronger. Kessler stepped forward. Show me. Marcus pointed to a carving of a giant figure holding a smaller human by the arm. The proportions were grotesque. Elongated limbs, massive hands, a head too large for its shoulders. Kessler ran a gloved hand along the grooves. This was carved by something with enormous strength, he said, and precision. Like what? Samantha asked. Kessler didn't answer. Instead, he turned to me. Where did you hear the footsteps? I pointed to the far tunnel. He nodded. Let's go. The tunnel narrowed, forcing us to crouch. The cold intensified. Frost thickened on the walls. The air tasted metallic. My headlamp flickered. So did Samantha's. Marcus cursed under his breath. Electromagnetic interference, he said, but there's no reason for it to be down here. Kessler didn't slow. We followed him deeper. The tunnel opened into a long corridor, unnaturally straight, unnaturally smooth. The walls were carved with more figures. Giants, humans, battles, floods, fires. Biblical scenes, but older. Much older. Samantha filmed everything, her breath shaking. This is impossible, she whispered. This looks like Genesis. Marcus swallowed hard. There were giants in the earth in those days, he murmured. And also, after that, I stopped walking. Marcus, I said, don't start quoting scripture. He looked at me. I'm not religious, he said, but this, he gestured to the walls, this is older than any culture we know, older than any human settlement in North America, older than... A sound cut him off. A low, distant rumble. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow, heavy, massive. Kessler raised a hand. We froze. The breathing grew louder, closer. My heart pounded. Samantha's camera trembled in her hands. Marcus whispered, "It's coming." Kessler reached into his black case. I expected a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a small device, a handheld scanner with a pulsing blue light. He pointed it down the corridor. The scanner beeped. Once, twice, then rapidly. Kessler's jaw tightened. It's awake, he said. My blood turned to ice. What is? I whispered. He didn't answer. The breathing grew louder. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Huge, tall, and wrong. Samantha gasped. Marcus stepped back. Kessler didn't move. The shadow grew. The shape emerged. A figure. Humanoid but enormous. 9 feet tall, maybe 10. Broad shoulders, long arms. Skin pale as limestone. Eyes reflecting our headlamps like an animal's. It stepped into the corridor and the cold deepened. Samantha whimpered. Marcus whispered, "Oh, God." The giant tilted its head. It sniffed the air, then it spoke. Not in English, or any language that I knew. A deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the stone. Kessler stepped forward. The giant growled. Kessler raised the scanner. The giant roared. The sound shook the corridor. Samantha screamed. Marcus stumbled backwards. The giant charged. Kessler shouted, "Move!" We ran. The corridor shook as the giant thundered after us. Its footsteps were earthquakes. Its breath was ice, and its roar was a storm. Samantha ran beside me, gasping, clutching her camera. Marcus tripped. I grabbed his arm and we kept running. The giant's hand slammed into the wall beside us, sending shards of limestone flying. We ducked. We sprinted. We didn't look back. Kessler shouted, "Left, now!" We veered into a side passage. The giant roared behind us, too large to follow immediately. The passage narrowed. We squeezed through. The giant's arm reached in after us. Massive, pale fingers like the stone. It couldn't fit, not fully, but it could reach. Its hand scraped the rock inches from my face. Samantha screamed. Marcus sobbed. Kessler grabbed a flare from his belt and lit it. The giant recoiled, snarling. Kessler threw the flare at its hand. The giant roared. not in pain, but in anger. It withdrew. The passage shook as it slammed the wall. Dust rained down on us. Kessler turned. "We need to keep moving," he said. "There are more." "More?" The word hit me like a blow. "More," I whispered. He nodded. "That was a scout." My stomach dropped. "A scout for what?" Kessler looked down the dark passage. "For the rest of the colony." We moved deeper into the side tunnel. The cold followed us. The silence followed us. The knowledge followed us. We were not alone. We were not safe. We weren't prepared. Samantha whispered, "What are they?" Kessler didn't answer. Marcus did. "Nephilim," he said softly. "The giants of old. The men of renown." I shook my head. "That's mythology." Marcus looked at me. "So were dragons until we discovered dinosaur bones." Samantha swallowed. "So were angels." Kessler stopped walking. He turned to us. "They're not angels," he said. "They're not demons. They're not gods." He paused. "They're survivors." "Of what?" I asked. He looked at the carvings on the wall. "The flood." My breath caught. "That's impossible." "Is it?" he asked. "Every culture on Earth has a flood myth. Everyone. And everyone mentions giants." Samantha whispered, "So they hid here?" Kessler nodded. "Deep underground, away from the water, away from the world." Marcus shivered. "And now they're awake." Kessler's expression hardened. "They woke up when you opened the chamber." My stomach twisted. "This is our fault?" "No," he said. "This was inevitable." The tunnel shook. A distant roar echoed through the stone, and Kessler raised his scanner. "They're coming." We ran, not towards the exit, not towards safety, but deeper, because the giants were between us and the surface, because the only way out was through them, and because Kessler, calm, cold, unreadable, said the words I will never forget. "You need to see what they're guarding." We moved deeper into the side passage, the cold following us like a living thing. The tunnel narrowed, then widened into a sloping descent. The limestone walls glistened with frost. Our headlamps flickered, struggling against the electromagnetic interference. Samantha whispered behind me, "Why is it getting colder? We're going deeper. It should be warmer." She was right. Caves stabilize around the mean annual temperature of the region. Missouri caves should sit around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Down here, it was below freezing. Kessler didn't answer her. He didn't answer any of us. He just kept moving. The passage opened into a massive chamber. Not natural, not carved by water, carved by hands. The ceiling arched overhead like the inside of a cathedral. Pillars of limestone shaped, not formed, rose from the floor to the ceiling. The walls were covered in carvings more detailed than anything we'd seen before. Samantha lifted her camera, breath shaking. "Oh my God." Marcus stepped forward, shining his light across the wall. The carvings told a story. A flood swallowing the world, giants fleeing into caves, humans drowning, mountains disappearing beneath the waves. A great hand, not human, reaching down from the sky. I felt my stomach twist. This is a flood myth," Marcus whispered, "but older than any we know." Kessler stepped toward the central carving, a giant figure kneeling before a massive stone door. "This is what they're guarding," he said. I frowned. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he approached the door. It was enormous, 20 feet tall, 10 feet wide, carved from a single slab of stone. Symbols covered its surface, not runes, not hieroglyphs, something older, something primal. Samantha whispered, "Is that writing?" Marcus shook his head. "No, it's something else." Kessler placed his hand on the stone. The cold deepened. The chamber seemed to exhale. Samantha stepped back. "Don't touch it," she whispered. Kessler ignored her. The stone vibrated beneath his palm. A low hum filled the chamber. The carvings on the walls seemed to shift into flickering light. I felt the hair on my arms raise. "Kessler," I said, "stop." He didn't. The hum grew louder. The cold intensified. The stone door began to move, slowly, silently opening. Samantha gasped. Marcus stumbled backwards. I felt my heart stop. Behind the door was darkness. Not normal darkness. A darkness that felt thick, heavy, and alive. Kessler stepped back. "It's open," he said. I stared at him. "You knew this was here." He didn't deny it. "You knew what we'd find." He didn't deny that either. Samantha whispered, "What's inside?" Kessler looked at the darkness. "Something older than the Nephilim." My blood turned to ice. "Older?" I whispered. "Older than the giants?" He nodded. "The Nephilim were not the first to come here. They were not the first to hide. They were not the first to fear the flood." Marcus swallowed hard. "What's older than the Nephilim?" Kessler looked at him. "Their fathers?" A sound came from the darkness. A low, resonant vibration that shook the stone beneath our feet. Samantha grabbed my arm. "Lena," she whispered, "we need to go." She was right. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But Kessler stepped closer to the doorway. "You need to see this," he said. "No," I said. We need to leave." He turned to me. "You don't understand. This is the discovery of a century, of the millennium. This is—" A hand emerged from the darkness. Not a giant's hand. Something bigger. Much bigger. The fingers were long, skeletal, jointed in ways that didn't make sense. The skin was pale, translucent, and stretched over bone. The nails were black and curved like daggers. The hand gripped the edge of the doorway. The stone cracked beneath its weight, and Samantha screamed. Marcus stumbled backwards, tripping over a fallen stalagmite. I froze. The hand pulled. Something stepped into the light. Something enormous, ancient, and wrong. It wasn't a giant. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything I had a name for. Its head brushed the ceiling. The limbs were long. The torso was too narrow, and the eyes were deep, empty pits. Its mouth was a vertical slit that opened slowly, revealing rows of teeth like shards of stone. It exhaled. The cold hit us like a physical force. Samantha collapsed to her knees. Marcus gasped, clutching his chest. Kessler didn't move. He stared at the creature with something like awe. "It's awake," he whispered. The creature tilted its head. It looked at him, then at me, then Samantha, and finally Marcus. It inhaled. The air rushed towards it, pulling dust, frost, and the breath from our lungs. I choked. Samantha fell forward, gasping. Marcus collapsed. Kessler stood firm. The creature exhaled. The cold deepened. It shook the chamber, and the stone door cracked. And then a roar echoed through the chamber. Not from the creature, from behind us. The Nephilim, the giants, they were coming, fast. Kessler's eyes widened. They're trying to stop it, he said. My heart pounded. Stop what? He looked at me. Stop it from getting out. The giants thundered into the chamber, massive, pale, and furious. Their roar shook the stone. Their footsteps cracked the floor. The ancient creature turned towards them. Then the giants charged. The chamber erupted into chaos. Stone shattered, dust filled the air, and the cold became unbearable. Samantha grabbed my arm. Lena, she screamed, we have to run. She was right. We ran. Marcus stumbled after us, gasping, barely conscious. Behind us, the giants clashed with the ancient creature, a battle of titans that shook the chamber. Kessler didn't follow. He stood before the doorway, staring into the darkness. As we fled, I heard him whisper, it's finally happening. Then the chamber collapsed. We sprinted through the corridor, dodging falling stone and choking on dust. The ground shook beneath our feet, and the cold chased us like a living thing. Samantha screamed as a chunk of ceiling crashed behind us, causing Marcus to fall. I grabbed him and kept running. The roar of the giants echoed behind us. The ancient creature shrieked, a sound that felt like it was tearing the world apart. We reached the side passage and squeezed through. The giant's hands slammed into the wall behind us, too large to follow. We crawled through the narrow tunnel, gasping, sobbing, and shaking until we finally reached the carved chamber. It was shaking, cracking, and collapsing. Samantha grabbed my hand. Lena, she whispered, we're not getting out. I squeezed her hand back. Yes, we are, I said. We ran towards the first chamber. The cold followed, the roars followed, the darkness itself followed. We reached the crack in the wall and crawled through. The chamber behind us collapsed. The cold, the roars, the darkness all stopped. We stumbled into the tourist chamber, gasping, shaking, and covered in dust and frost. We were alive, for now. We burst out of the fissure into the tourist tunnel like drowning swimmers breaking the surface. The warm, humid air of Merrimack Caverns hit us like a shock. My lungs burned, my legs shook, my vision blurred, but we were alive. Samantha collapsed against the wall. Marcus fell to his knees, gasping, coughing, dust and frost clinging to his beard. I leaned against the railing, trying to steady my breathing. Behind us, the crack in the limestone groaned, a deep, resonant sound. Not sure if it was a warning or a promise. Samantha looked at me, eyes wide and terrified. Lena, it's coming up. I didn't answer, because I knew she was right. The cold was rising. The air temperature dropped 5 degrees in seconds. Frost crept across the stone floor. Lights flickered. Marcus whispered, we need to get out now. We ran. The tourist tunnels twisted through the caverns like arteries. Our headlamps bounced off stalactites and flowstone formations as we sprinted towards the main chamber. The deeper we went, the more wrong everything felt. The air was too still, the silence too complete, and the cold too sharp. We reached the main cavern, the massive cathedral-like space where tourists gathered. The lights were on, the benches were empty, The gift shop kiosk said abandoned, but something was off. The air shimmered like heat distortion, except it wasn't heat, it was cold. A wave of freezing air rolled through the chamber, frosting the railings, the floor, the walls. Samantha gasped as her breath fogged in front of her. Marcus whispered, "It's spreading." I grabbed his arm. "We need to get to the surface." We ran towards the exit tunnel. Halfway there, the lights went out. All of them. The cavern plunged into darkness. Samantha screamed. Marcus cursed. I fumbled for my headlamp. It flickered and then died. The cold deepened. A sound echoed through the cavern, a low, resonant hum. Not mechanical, not natural, and definitely not human. The same sound we'd heard behind the stone door. The ancient thing, the father of the Nephilim. It was awake, and it was rising. A faint glow appeared behind us. Blue, pale, and cold. Not fire or electricity. Bioluminescence. Samantha grabbed my hand. "Lena, look." I turned. Shapes moved in the darkness. Tall, massive shapes. The Nephilim. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, pale blue like ice reflecting moonlight. Their skin shimmered with frost, and their breath came out in clouds. They were climbing into the main cavern, one by one, silent, watching, and waiting. Marcus whispered, They're not attacking." He was right. They weren't charging, they weren't roaring, and they weren't hunting. They were forming a line, a barrier between us and the fissure, between us and the ancient thing rising behind them. Samantha whispered, "They're protecting us." I shook my head. No, they're protecting something else. The fissure behind them glowed with the same pale blue light. The hum grew louder and the cold intensified. The stone floors began to crack. A massive hand, skeletal and pale, reached through the fissure. Samantha screamed as Marcus stumbled backwards. The ancient creature pulled itself upwards, its head emerging into the cavern, its eyes empty pits and its mouth open slow, revealing those wicked stone-like teeth. Then it exhaled. The cold hit us like a physical force. I fell to my knees, breath being ripped from my lungs, and the Nephilim roared. Not at us, at it, and then they charged. The cavern shook as the giants collided, the Nephilim slamming into the ancient creature with a force that cracked the stone. The creature shrieked, a sound that felt like it was going to sunder the cavern apart. The Nephilim fought with everything they had, and they were losing. "Lena!" Samantha's voice cut through the chaos. She was crawling towards me, dragging her camera, her face pale and cold. "We have to go." She was right. The giants were buying us time. We had to use it. I grabbed Marcus, pulling him to his feet, and we ran towards the exit tunnel. Behind us, the battle raged. Stone shattered, giants roared, the ancient creature shrieking, and the cold chased us like a living thing. As we reached the tunnel, we ran. The lights flickered back on, then off, and then on again. The cold followed, the hum followed, the living darkness followed. We reached the final incline and the long ramp leading to the surface. Samantha stumbled as I grabbed her. Marcus fell, I pulled him up, we climbed. The cold intensified, frost formed on the walls, and the hum grew louder. A roar echoed from behind us. The ancient creature was coming. Not the Nephilim, the ancient one, the father, the thing older than the flood, older than humanity itself, older than the world we knew. We reached the final bend, and the exit was ahead. Sunlight, warmth, and life. We sprinted, but the cold surged behind us. A hand, massive and skeletal, slammed into the tunnel wall inches from my head. We all screamed. We burst into the sunlight. The cold stopped. The hum, the darkness, none of it followed, and the hand withdrew. The creature shrieked, a sound of rage and frustration, a sound of hunger being denied. And then silence. The fissure behind us collapsed. The tunnel caved in. The entrance was sealed. The cold vanished. We collapsed onto the ground outside of the cavern, gasping, shaking, and sobbing, but alive. The world had changed. Park rangers rushed towards us. Medics followed. Questions flew. We didn't answer. We couldn't. Not yet. Not after what we'd seen. And not after what we'd survived. Samantha clutched her camera to her chest like a lifeline. Marcus just stared at the collapsed entrance, eyes wide and unblinking. I sat in the sunlight, shaking, trying to breathe, trying to understand and to forget. But I couldn't. I knew the truth. The Nephilim weren't monsters. They were jailers. And the thing they were guarding was still alive, still awake and waiting. And the only thing keeping it underground was a pile of broken rock. For now. They took us to the ranger station first. Not the hospital or the university, not anywhere normal, the ranger station. Because it was isolated, controlled, and easy to lock down. Samantha sat beside me on a bench, wrapped in a thermal blanket, still clutching her camera like it was a lifeline. Marcus lay on a cot, an oxygen mask over his face, his skin pale with shock. I stared at the floor, hand shaking, trying to process what we'd seen, what we'd survived, and what we had unleashed. The door opened. Agent Kessler walked in, alive, uninjured, unfazed. I stood up so fast the room spun. You, I said, you knew what was down there. He didn't deny it. You opened the door, I said. You woke that thing. He didn't deny that either. Samantha stood beside me, trembling. You used us, she whispered. You used us as bait. Kessler looked at her. No, he said. I used you as witnesses. I stared at him. Witnesses to what? He stepped closer. To the truth. He sat across from us, folding his hands on the table. What you saw, he said, was not a monster. It wasn't even a demon. And it damn sure wasn't a god. I clenched my jaw. Then what was it? He took a slow breath. A remnant. Of what? Samantha whispered. Of the world, he said. The world before the flood. My stomach twisted. You're talking about Genesis. I'm talking about history, he said. History older than any civilization, older than any scripture, older than even humanity as we know it. Marcus stirred on the cot. You're saying the flood was real, he murmured. Kessler nodded. It was not a myth. It was an extinction event, a global reset. And the Nephilim, the giants, were not wiped out. They hid deep underground, in systems like Merrimack Caverns, and systems all over the world. Samantha swallowed hard. And the thing behind the door? Kessler's expression darkened. That was not Nephilim. He paused. That was what created them. The room went silent. I felt my heart pounding. You're saying, I whispered, that that thing was, what, a progenitor? Kessler nodded. The Nephilim were hybrids, half human, half something else. Something older. Something that walked the earth before the flood. Something that should have died. Samantha's voice shook. Why was it sealed away? Kessler looked at her. Because even the Nephilim feared it. He stood and he walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over Merrimack Caverns. Birds chirped. The world looked normal. It wasn't. The Nephilim were not evil, he said. They were not even monsters. They were guardians, jailers. They sealed their progenitor away and stayed underground for thousands of years to ensure it never escaped. I felt sick. And we opened the door. Kessler nodded. You opened the door. Samantha's voice cracked. Did the Nephilim survive? Kessler didn't answer. He didn't need to. We'd seen the chamber collapse. We'd heard the roars. We felt the ground shake. They were gone. All of them. They died fighting the thing they had imprisoned. They died because of us. I sank into the chair, burying my hands in my face. Oh, God. Kessler turned back to us. You need to understand something, he said. The creature's not dead. It's not contained, and it's not dormant. My blood turned to ice. It is awake, he said, and it is learning. Samantha whispered, Learning what? Kessler looked at her hard. How to get out. The door opened again. 2 men in suits entered. Not rangers or scientists, not anyone local. Federal. They handed Kessler a tablet. He scanned it, then turned to us. We have a problem. He placed the tablet on the table. A video played. Grainy infrared taken from a drone. The collapsed entrance to the cave system. Except it wasn't collapsed anymore. The rock was moving, shifting, and breathing. Samantha gasped. Marcus sat up, ripping off his oxygen mask. Oh no. The rock bulged outwards. Cracked and split. A pale hand, skeletal and jointed wrong, pushed through. The drone feed cut out. Kessler looked at us. It's coming to the surface. They moved us immediately. Not to a hospital, not to a safe house, to a bunker deep underground. Ironically. Samantha sat beside me in the armored transport, shaking, her camera still clutched in her hands. Marcus just stared straight ahead, eyes hollow. I watched the trees blur past the windows, the Missouri countryside peaceful and unaware. Lena, Samantha whispered, What happens now? I didn't know. I didn't have answers, but Kessler did. He sat across from us, hands folded, expression unreadable. The creature is not fully awake, he said. It is weak, disoriented, and confined to the cave system. For now, I said. He nodded. For now. Marcus swallowed hard. What does it want? Kessler looked at him. Freedom. Samantha whispered, and after that? Kessler didn't answer. He didn't need to. We all knew. That creature had survived the flood. It had survived the Nephilim, and had survived millennia underground. It would survive us, unless we stopped it. If we could stop it. If it could be stopped at all. The transport slowed. We entered a secure facility, concrete walls, steel doors, armed guards. They led us to a briefing room. A massive screen displayed satellite imagery of the Merrimack region. Thermal anomalies, seismic spikes, cold signatures spreading outward. The creature was moving, slow but steady. Kessler stood at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we are facing an entity older than civilization, older than humanity, and older than the world as we know it." He paused. "It is not anything we've ever dealt with before. It is not supernatural. It is biological." My stomach twisted. "Then how do we stop it?" I asked. Kessler exhaled. "We don't know." The room fell silent. Samantha whispered, "What about the Nephilim?" "They fought it. They held it back." Kessler nodded. "They did, for thousands of years." Marcus leaned forward. "So we need to understand how they did it." Kessler looked at him. "That's why you're here." I blinked. "What?" "You three are the only living witnesses," he said. "You saw the carvings, you saw the chamber, you saw the Nephilim fight. You know more about the entity than anyone alive." Samantha shook her head. No, we barely survived. We're not experts, we're not soldiers, you're scientists," Kessler said. "And right now, science is the only thing that might save us." I stared at him. "You want us to go back?" He didn't deny it. "You want us to go back into the cave?" He didn't deny that either. Samantha grabbed my hand. "Lena, we can't." I looked at her, hard and stern. "I know." But Kessler stepped closer. "You don't understand," he said. "The creature is not just waking up." He paused. "It's calling." My breath caught. "Calling what?" Kessler looked at the satellite feed. Cold signatures, seismic spikes, and thermal anomalies all spreading. "Others," he said. The room went silent. Samantha whispered, "There are more?" "Many more," Kessler nodded. Marcus swallowed hard. "How long do we have?" Kessler looked at the screen. "Hours, maybe." I felt the world tilt beneath me. Hours. Not days, not weeks. Fucking hours. The creature was calling others. The Nephilim were gone. Their ancient jailers were dead. And the thing they had imprisoned was free. Samantha squeezed my hand again. "Lena, what do we do?" I looked at her, I looked at Marcus, and then up to the screen. I sat and watched the cold signatures spreading across Missouri, at the seismic spikes globally, at the ancient thing rising from the earth. And I said the only thing that I could. We go back. I didn't know bones could make the air feel colder. Not metaphorically, literally colder. Like the temperature dropped 10 degrees the moment we uncovered them. I was filming when it happened, my camera rolling as Dr. Hargreaves brushed away the last layers of soil. The Resticoach River Valley stretched behind us, green and endless, the water glinting through the trees. It was supposed to be beautiful. It was supposed to be the biggest opportunity of my life. Instead, the moment the bones appeared, I felt something in the forest shift, like the trees were holding their breath. "Jesus," I whispered behind the camera. "That's huge." "Femur," Dr. Hargreaves said. "Voice tight. Human morphology. But the size is impossible," said Dr. Patel, our osteologist, "unless this person was over 8 feet tall." I zoomed in. The bone was thick, heavy, longer than my arm. The soil around it was dark, almost black, and cold enough that my breath fogged. In June. "Is there permafrost here?" I asked. No, Patel said. Not even close. I kept filming. That was my job. Capture everything. Document the dig. Don't get in the way. But the longer I filmed, the more wrong the air felt. Like something was watching us. Like something was waking up. Let's widen the trench, Hargreaves said. Carefully. We don't want to damage. A crack echoed through the trees. We all froze. Another crack. Closer. Moose? I asked. No, said our field tech Jonah. Too heavy. The forest went silent. Completely silent. No birds. No insects. No wind. Just the cold and the bones. We didn't talk about the noise. Not really. Scientists don't like to admit fear. They like data, measurements, explanations. But that night, around the campfire, everyone was jumpy. I kept replaying the footage on my laptop. The bone, the soil, the way the shadow seemed to move behind us. Turn that off, Jonah said finally. It's creeping me out. Sorry, I said, closing the screen. He wasn't wrong. The footage felt wrong. Like the camera had picked up something my eyes hadn't. Let's go over tomorrow's plan, Hargreaves said, trying to sound normal. We'll expand the trench, take soil samples, and a scream cut through the night. High, sharp, and human. We all shot to our feet. That came from the river, Patel said. No, Jonah whispered. That came from the woods. We grabbed flashlights, bear spray, a flare gun. Not enough, but it felt better than nothing. Stay together, Hargreaves said. We moved toward the tree line, lights cutting through the dark. Hello, he called. Is anyone out there? Silence. Then a second scream. Closer. I felt it in my teeth. Jesus Christ, Jonah said. That's not. A branch snapped behind us. We spun. There was nothing there, just trees, darkness, and cold. Back to camp, Hargreaves said. Now. We didn't argue. I didn't sleep. None of us did. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the scream again. Not just fear, pain, agony, something tearing someone apart. At 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my tent, slow and heavy, crunching through the underbrush. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right beside me, and something exhaled. Long, low, and wet. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The thing outside my tent sniffed. Once, twice, then a deep, rattling growl. I nearly screamed. The footsteps moved on. I stayed frozen until dawn. When the sun finally rose, I stumbled out of my tent shaking. Everyone looked the same, pale, exhausted, and terrified. You heard it too, Jonah said, quietly. I nodded. Hargreaves rubbed his face. We need to check the trench, make sure nothing was disturbed. I didn't want to go back there, but we did. And the trench? The trench was destroyed. The soil was churned up, clawed apart. The bone, the massive femur, was gone. Something dug it out, Patel whispered. No, Jonah said. Something took it. The soil was frozen solid. Frost clung to the edges of the trench. In June. What the hell is happening? I whispered. Hargreaves didn't answer. He was staring at the tree line, at the huge footprints, each one nearly 2 feet long, human-shaped and bare, leading into the forest. Everyone back to camp, now, he said. We packed fast. Too fast. I kept dropping my things. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't close my camera case. Sammy, Jonah said, grabbing my wrist. Hey, look at me. I looked. His eyes were wide, scared, but steady. We're getting out of here, he said. Okay, we're leaving. I nodded, but I didn't believe him. Because the forest was too quiet, the air was too cold, and because something was watching us. I could feel it. We loaded the trucks. Hargreaves got behind the wheel. Everyone in, he said. We're heading to the ranger station. We piled in. I sat in the back, clutching my camera like a lifeline. The engine started, and we pulled onto the dirt road. And then something stepped into the middle of the road ahead of us. Tall, massive, and human-shaped, but wrong. My God, was it wrong? Its skin was pale and stretched tight over limbs. Its hair was thin and patchy. Its mouth hung open, showing jagged teeth. Frost clung to its shoulders. Its eyes were completely white, and it stared at us. Then it screamed. The same scream we'd heard last night. Hargreaves slammed on the brakes. Jesus Christ, Jonah shouted. The creature charged. Go, Patel screamed. Hargreaves floored it. The truck lurched forward. The creature hit the hood with a sickening thud. The windshield shattered and cold air blasted in. The creature's huge hand clawed inside, reaching for us. I screamed, Hargreaves screamed, and the creature grabbed him by the face and pulled. Blood sprayed across the cab. The truck veered off the road and we hit a tree. Everything went black. I woke up in silence. Cold, pain, darkness. My head throbbed, my ears rang, and my vision blurred. The truck was on its side. Smoke drifted from the engine. Hargreaves was gone. Just gone. The driver's seat was empty except for blood. A lot of blood. Jonah? I whispered. No answer. Patel? Nothing. I crawled out of the broken window, glass cutting my hands. The forest was too silent. I staggered to my feet. Sammy? I spun. Jonah was leaning against the tree, clutching his arm. Blood soaked his sleeve. Oh my God, I said, running to him. Are you? Shh, he whispered. It's still here. My blood turned to ice. What? He pointed. Footprints circling the truck, leading into the trees, and then a second set, smaller, human, dragged. Patel, oh my God, I whispered. Oh God, oh God. We have to move, Jonah said. Now. Where? The river, he said. It hates water. The stories. What? What stories? Chenoo. The word felt like a knife. I'd heard it before. In Wabanaki folklore, a human turned monster by hatred and cold. A giant cannibal. A thing that hunted people in the deep woods. That's not real, I whispered. Jonah looked at me. It is now. We moved towards the river, slow and quiet. Every step felt like a death sentence. The forest pressed in around us, the air grew colder, and my breath fogged. Then a sound behind us, a low rattling growl. Jonah grabbed my arm. Run! We ran. Branches whipped my face, roots caught my feet, my lungs burned. Behind us, something crashed through the trees. It was too fast. Faster, Jonah shouted. I tried, God, I tried, but the thing was gaining, and I could hear it breathing, wet, ragged, and hungry. We burst into the clearing, and the river glinted ahead. We're almost. Jonah screamed. I turned. The Chenoo had him. It lifted him off the ground like a doll. He kicked, punched, screamed. Run! He shouted at me. Sam! The Chenoo bit into his shoulder. The sound. I, I can't describe it. I can still hear it. I ran. I didn't look back. I ran until my legs gave out. I collapsed by the riverbank, sobbing, shaking, and freezing. Jonah's screams echoed through the valley and then stopped. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember running. I don't remember anything except the river and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like it was trying to escape my chest. I stumbled along the bank, slipping on wet stones, grabbing at branches to keep myself upright. The cold was worse here, sharp, biting, and unnatural. Every breath felt like inhaling needles. I kept hearing Jonas scream. I kept hearing the moment it stopped. I kept hearing the silence that followed. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. The forest pressed in around me, thick and dark. The trees leaning like they were listening. Eventually, my legs gave out. I collapsed beside a fallen log, gasping, shaking, my hands numb. I didn't want to cry. I cried anyway. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for the sun to shift. Long enough for the shadows to stretch. Long enough for the cold to deepen. I wiped my face and forced myself to breathe. I had to move. I had to find help. I had to survive. I pushed myself up and scanned the forest. That's when I saw the footprints, huge, deep, and leading along the riverbank, following me. My stomach dropped. It was tracking me. Of course it was. I wasn't fast. I wasn't quiet. I wasn't anything except alive, and that seemed to be enough for it. I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep moving. The river curved east towards the old logging road we used to reach the site. If I could make it there, maybe, maybe I could find a ranger station or a cabin or anything. I followed the water, staying close enough to hear it, but far enough that the bank wouldn't give me away. Every few minutes I'd stop and listen. Nothing. No birds, insects, just the river and cold. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Frost clung to the leaves. My breath fogged constantly. My fingers were stiff, even inside my gloves. It felt like walking into winter in June. I kept filming without realizing it, my camera hanging from its strap, lens pointed forward. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was denial. Maybe I needed proof that this was real. I don't know. But the red light blinked steadily as I walked. I found the first body an hour later. At least, I think it was an hour. Time was a little slippery. It was Patel. Or what was left of him? He was lying on his back near the water, eyes open, face pale, expression frozen in terror. His clothes were torn and his skin was covered in frost. There was no blood. None. Just cold. Like he'd been left outside in a blizzard for days. I dropped to my knees beside him, shaking. Dr. Patel, I whispered. Oh God, oh God, oh God. His skin was hard, cold like stone. I reached for his hand. It snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small, brittle crack, like breaking a frozen twig. I jerked back, choking on a sob. I couldn't stay. I couldn't bury him. I couldn't do anything except run. So I did. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped behind the ridge. The cold deepened. My breath came out in clouds. My fingers were numb. My toes were numb. My face burned. I kept moving. I didn't have a choice. Every time I slowed, I heard it behind me. A branch snapping, a low rattling breath, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and following. Always following. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I saw it again, I'd freeze. I'd die. So I kept my eyes forward, and I ran. By the time I reached the logging road, the sun was almost gone. The sky was a deep, bruised purple. The trees cast long shadows across the dirt. I stumbled onto the road and collapsed, gasping. I'd made it. I'd actually made it. I laughed, hysterical, breathless, and half sobbing. Then I heard it. A low, distant howl. Not a wolf, not anything natural. A sound full of hunger and hatred and cold. The Chenoo. It was close, too close. I scrambled to my feet. I ran down the road, legs shaking, lungs burning. The forest on either side felt alive, shifting and watching. The howl came again, closer. I pushed myself harder. The road curved, and there, through the trees, I saw a cabin. A real cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney. A truck sat out front. Lights glowed in the windows. I almost collapsed from relief. I sprinted towards it, waving my arms. Help! I screamed. Please, help! The door opened. A man stepped out, middle-aged, wearing a flannel shirt and a confused expression. What the hell? Please, I gasped, stumbling up the steps. You have to let me in. There's something in the woods. Something. A branch snapped behind me. The man's face changed. Confusion, then fear. Inside, he said, Now. I didn't argue. I dove through the doorway, and he slammed the door behind me and locked it. What's out there? He asked, voice shaking. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, something hit the side of the cabin, hard. The wall shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The man's eyes went wide. What the hell was that? I backed away from the door, heart pounding. The Chenoo hit the cabin again. The wood groaned, the windows rattled, and the man grabbed a rifle from the wall. Stay back, he said. I didn't need to be told twice. The Chenoo circled the cabin. Footsteps heavy, slow, and deliberate. The air grew colder. Frost crept around the windows. The man raised the rifle. The Chenoo roared, and the sound shook the cabin. My bones vibrated. The man fired, and the gunshot echoed through the valley. The Chenoo screamed, not in pain, in anger. It hit the cabin again, harder. The wood cracked, and the man fired again. The Chenoo roared, and then silence. The man lowered the rifle, breathing hard. Did did I get it? He whispered. I didn't answer, because I heard something. A creak above us, on the roof. The man looked up. Oh God, he whispered. The Chenoo dropped through the ceiling. It didn't crash through the ceiling like an animal. It dropped through, like something that had been waiting. The roof groaned, then split, then a massive pale shape fell through in a shower of splinters. The man with the rifle barely had time to shout before the thing hit the floorboards with a thud that shook the entire cabin. I screamed and scrambled backwards, hitting the wall so hard my teeth rattled. The Chenoo rose slowly, unfolding itself like a nightmare stretching awake. Its limbs were too long, its shoulders hunched, and frost steamed off its skin. Its breath came out in clouds. The man fired again. The sound was deafening. The Chenoo staggered, just a step, but it didn't fall. It turned its head towards him, slow and deliberate, like it was annoyed. The man fired again. The Chenoo moved, not fast, not slow, just inevitable. The man backed up, firing until the rifle clicked empty. The Chenoo reached him, and I looked away. I didn't need to see it. I didn't want to. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound still came through. Heavy impacts, a choked cry, the thud of something hitting the floor, and then silence. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I didn't exist. The Chenoo exhaled a long, low, rattling breath that filled the cabin with cold. I felt it move. I felt the floorboard shift under its weight. I felt it turn towards me, and I kept my eyes shut. If I didn't look, maybe. A floorboard creaked right in front of me. I opened my eyes. The Chenoo was crouched inches away, its face level with mine. Its eyes were white, empty, but somehow still aware. Its breath washed over me, freezing cold. Its mouth hung open slightly, showing teeth that didn't look like they belonged in a human skull. It leaned closer. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't scream. It sniffed me. A long, slow inhale. Then it stopped. Its head jerked towards the window. Something moved outside. A distant sound, maybe a branch snapping, maybe the river shifting, maybe nothing at all, pulled its attention away from me. The Chenoo stood, turned, and walked out through the hole in the wall like the cabin was made of paper. I didn't move for a full minute. Maybe 2. Maybe 10. Time didn't exist anymore. When I finally forced myself to stand, my legs shook so badly I had to grab the table to stay upright. The cabin was freezing. Frost coated the walls. My breath fogged with every exhale. The man's rifle lay on the floor. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was empty. Of course it was. I dropped it and I grabbed my camera instead. I don't know why. Maybe because it was familiar. Maybe because it was proof. Maybe because it was the only thing I had left. I stepped outside. The air hit me like a slap, sharp, cold, and unnatural. The trees were coated in frost. The ground glittered with ice. The Chenoo was gone. But its footprints, deep, massive, unmistakable, led back into the forest, away from me, for now. I didn't know how long I had. I didn't know where to go. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. I followed the road, not because I felt safe, not because it was safe. Nothing felt safe. But because it was the only path that wasn't swallowed by trees, the only direction that made sense, the only chance I had to find someone, anyone, before the Chenoo came back. The sun was gone now, hidden behind thick clouds. The sky was a dull gray. The air was colder than ever. My fingers were numb, my toes burned, my breath came out in ragged clouds. But I kept walking. Every few minutes I heard something behind me. A branch snapping, a low rumble, footsteps. I didn't look back. I couldn't. so I kept my eyes forward and walked. I found the second cabin just before dusk. It was smaller than the first, older, more weathered, half hidden behind a stand of spruce. Smoke drifted from the chimney. A lantern glowed in the window. I almost cried. I stumbled towards it, waving my arm. "Hello," I called. "Please, please, I need help." The door opened and a woman stepped out. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with long gray hair and a lined face. She wore a heavy coat and held a lantern in one hand. She looked at me, really looked, and her expression changed. Not confusion, not fear, recognition. "Get inside," she said. I didn't hesitate. I ran up the steps into the cabin. She shut the door behind me and bolted it. The cabin was warm. A fire crackled in the stove. Blankets hung on the walls. The air smelled like cedar and tea. I collapsed onto a chair, shaking. The woman knelt in front of me. "You saw it," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Tears spilled down my face. It, it, it killed my team," I whispered. "It killed everyone." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I warned them not to dig there." My breath caught. "What?" She stood and poured tea into a mug, hands steady. "The land is old," she said. "Older than the stories. Older than the people who told them. The Chenoo sleeps there, buried deep, frozen and waiting." I stared at her. "You know what it is?" She nodded. "My grandmother told me the stories. Her grandmother told her. The Chenoo was once a person, a human whose heart froze with hatred. They grow, they change, they become something else." She handed me the tea. I held it with both hands, trying to stop shaking. "How do you stop it?" I whispered. She looked at me for a long moment. "You don't." My stomach dropped. "There must be something." "There isn't," she said. "The Chenoo cannot be killed, only slowed, only avoided, only survived." I swallowed hard. "Then what do I do?" She hesitated. Then she said, "You run." The cabin shook, not violently, not like before, just enough to make the lantern sway. The woman's face went pale. "It followed you," she whispered. My blood turned to ice. "No," I said. "No, no, I didn't see it." "You don't see the Chenoo," she said. "Not until it wants you to." The cabin shook again, harder. The woman grabbed my arm. "Go out the back," she said. "Follow the ridge. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" She didn't answer. The cabin shook again. Something scraped against the wall, slow and deliberate. The woman pushed me towards the back door. "Run," she said. "Now." I opened the door. Cold air blasted in. I looked back at her. She nodded once. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. Behind me, the Chenoo roared. The sound tore through the valley. The cabin shook. The woman screamed. I kept running. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I don't remember the first mile or the second. I only remember the sound behind me, the Chenoo's roar echoing through the valley, rolling rolling over the trees like thunder. The kind of sound that makes your bones feel hollow. The kind of sound that tells you you're prey. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs shook, until the cold felt like it was inside my blood. The ridge rose ahead of me, a steep, rocky slope covered in spruce and moss. The woman had told me to follow it. She told me not to stop, not to look back. I didn't. I climbed. The rocks were slick with frost. My fingers slipped, my knees scraped, my breath came out in ragged clouds. The cold was worse here, sharp and unnatural, like the air itself was turning against me. Halfway up the ridge, I heard something below. A branch snapping, then another, then a low, rattling breath. I pressed myself against the rock, shaking. The Chenoo was climbing after me. I didn't look. I didn't breathe. I just climbed. By the time I reached the top, the sky had darkened to a deep, bruised blue. The forest stretched out below me, endless, silent, and cold. The river glinted faintly through the trees. The wind cut across the ridge like a blade. I collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping. My hands were numb. My face burned. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. I curled into myself, trying to stay warm, trying to stay quiet, trying to stay alive. The ridge was narrow, a spine of rock jutting above the valley. The trees here were twisted, bent by wind and age. The ground was uneven, covered in frost. I listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, no roar. Maybe it had lost me. Maybe the ridge was too steep. Maybe. A distant howl cut through the air. Not distant enough. I pressed my hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was still hunting me. Of course it was. The Chenoo didn't stop. It didn't give up. It didn't lose interest. It followed. Always. I forced myself to stand. My legs shook, my vision blurred. But I stood. I had to. The ridge stretched east, a narrow path between jagged rocks and steep drops. If I followed it long enough, maybe I'd reach the old fire tower. I'd seen it on the map. It wasn't far, maybe a mile, maybe two. If I could get there, maybe I could climb it. Maybe I could signal someone. Maybe I could survive. I started walking, slow, careful. Every step felt like it might be my last. The wind howled across the ridge, carrying the cold with it. My breath fogged constantly. My fingers were stiff, toes numb. The frost on the ground crunched beneath my boots. I kept moving. I didn't have a choice. I found the fire tower just as the last light faded. It rose above the trees, tall, rusted, and skeletal. The stairs creaked in the wind. The platform at the top swayed slightly. It looked like it might collapse if I breathed on it wrong. I didn't care. I ran to it, grabbed the railing, and started climbing. The metal was freezing. My hands stuck to it. My fingers burned. But I climbed anyway. Halfway up, I heard it. A roar. Too close. I climbed faster. The tower shook. The Chenoo hit the base. I screamed and kept climbing. The metal groaned under my weight. The wind howled, and the cold bit my skin. I reached the platform and collapsed, gasping. Below me, the Chenoo circled the tower. I could hear it breathing. Slow, heavy, and hungry. It scraped its claws against the metal, testing it. The tower shook. I crawled to the center of the platform and curled into a ball, shaking. Please, I whispered. Please, please, please. The Chenoo roared, and the tower swayed. I clung to the floorboards, praying it would just go away. The Chenoo hit the tower again, harder. The metal groaned, the bolts creaked, the entire structure shuddered. I squeezed my eyes shut. If it knocked the tower down, I'd die. If it climbed the tower, I'd die. If I waited for, if it waited for me to freeze, I'd die. There was no way out. No escape, no hope, just cold and fear and the Chenoo. I didn't know how long it stayed. Minutes, hours. Time didn't exist anymore. The Chenoo circled the tower, scraping its claws against the metal, rattling the structure, testing it. Sometimes it roared, sometimes it growled, sometimes it just breathed. Long, slow, rattling breaths that filled the air with frost. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't exist. Eventually, the sound faded. The breathing stopped. The cold ceased. And the forest fell silent. I opened my eyes. The Chenoo was gone for now. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The cold was too sharp, the fear too deep, and every sound made me flinch. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. Every shadow felt like a hand reaching for me. I stayed curled on the platform, shivering, waiting for dawn. When first light finally broke over the ridge, I almost cried. The forest below was covered in frost. The trees glittered, the river steamed. The air was still cold, but not as sharp as before. I forced myself to stand. My legs shook, my fingers were numb, but I stood. I had to. I looked down. The Chenoo's footprints circled the tower, deep, massive, and unmistakable, but they led away into the forest. It had left, for now. I climbed down the tower slowly, carefully, every step a prayer. When I reached the ground, I grabbed my camera and held it tight. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. I had to keep moving. I had to find help. I had to survive. I turned towards the east, towards the rising sun, and started walking. Behind me, far in the distance, a low, rattling howl echoed through the valley. The Chenoo was still hunting, and it wasn't done. Not yet. I don't remember how long I walked. The sun rose, the sun fell, the cold never left. I followed the ridge until the trees thinned and the ground sloped downward into a narrow valley. The frost was thicker here, coating the branches, the rocks, the ground. My boots crunched with every step. I kept filming. I don't know why. Maybe because the camera felt like the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Maybe because if I died, someone might find the footage. Maybe because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The forest was completely silent. No birds, insects, no wind, just the cold and the feeling that something was watching me, always watching. I reached the bottom of the valley just as the light began to fade. The trees here were twisted, bent inward like they were bowing towards something. The air was colder than ever, sharp, biting, unnatural. My breath fogged constantly. My legs felt like they were made of stone. I stumbled forward, desperate for shelter, for warmth, for anything. That's when I saw it, a structure, half buried in the snow, half collapsed, wooden beams jutting out at odd angles. An old ranger station, or what was left of one. I ran towards it, hope flaring in my chest. The door hung crooked on its hinges. The windows were shattered, the roof sagged, but it was shelter. It was something. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was stale, cold, and still. Dust coated the floor. Old maps hung on the walls. A broken radio set on a desk. A metal cot lay overturned in the corner. It was empty, completely empty. I closed the door behind me and slid the bolt into place. It wouldn't stop the Chenoo. Nothing would. But it made me feel better. A little bit. I sank onto the floor, hugging my knees to my chest and shaking. I was so tired, so cold, and so scared. I wanted to sleep. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to wake up in my dorm room and realize this had all been a nightmare. But I wasn't asleep. And this wasn't a nightmare. It was real. All of it. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours. Time really didn't matter anymore. Eventually I forced myself to stand. My legs shook, my head throbbed, my fingers burned with cold. I walked to the desk and picked up the radio. It was old, dusty, probably broken, but I had to try. I turned the dial. Static. I pressed the button. "This is Samantha Reyes," I said, voice shaking. "If anyone can hear me, please, I need help. I'm in the Rusticoach Valley. Something is out here. Something." A sound cut me off. A low, rattling breath right outside the door. My blood turned to ice. I set the radio down slowly, quietly, and carefully. The breath came again, closer. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. The Chenoo exhaled a long, slow, freezing breath that seeped through the cracks in the wood. Frost crept across the door frame. The handle twitched once, twice. Then it turned. The bolt held for a moment. Then the Chenoo pushed. The wood groaned. The hinges creaked. The bolt strained. I stumbled backward, tripping over the cot, falling onto the floor. The Chenoo pushed again, harder. The door cracked. A sliver of pale skin appeared through the gap. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed the only thing I could find, a metal pole from the broken cot. It felt useless. It was useless, but it was something. The Chenoo pushed again. The door splintered. A hand, massive, pale, and clawed, reached through the gap, groping blindly. I backed away, shaking. "Please," I whispered. "Please, don't." The Chenoo roared. The sound shook the entire station. The door exploded inwards. I screamed and swung the pole. It hit the Chenoo's arm with a dull thud. The creature didn't react. Not even a flinch. It stepped inside. The room grew colder. My breath fogged and vision blurred. The Chenoo loomed over me, tall, massive, and wrong. Its eyes white as snow. Its breath came out in clouds. Frost clung to its skin. It reached for me. I swung again. The pole bent. The Chenoo grabbed it and ripped it from my hands like it was nothing. I stumbled backwards, hitting the wall. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It leaned closer. Its breath washed over me, freezing, sharp, and unnatural. I squeezed my eyes shut. This was it. This is how I died. Then, a sound. A distant sound. A helicopter. The creature froze. Its head jerked towards the window. The helicopter grew louder, closer. The Chenoo snarled a low, guttural sound full of hatred. It turned back to me. For a moment, we stared at each other. Then, it stepped back, turned, and walked out through the shattered doorway. I collapsed to the floor, sobbing. The helicopter descended. Voices shouted. Boots hit the ground. Hands grabbed me. Warm hands. Human hands. I don't remember what they said. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember anything except the cold leaving my body and the sound of a helicopter blade drowning out the Chenoo's distant howl. They found me half frozen, delirious, clutching my camera like it was the only thing keeping me alive. They asked me what happened. I told them. They didn't believe me. They said I was hypothermic, traumatized, and confused. They said the others died in an accident, bear attack, exposure, a fall. They said there was no Chenoo. They said I imagined it. They said the footprints were snowmelt patterns. They said the frost was weather. They said the screams were wind. The valley was safe. They said a lot of things. I know the truth. I saw it. I survived. The creature is real. It's still out there. Still hunting. Still waiting. One day, when the cold returns and the valley falls silent, the frost creeps across the ground, it will come back. And next time, there won't be a helicopter or a rescue. There won't be a survivor. Just the Chenoo and the cold and the silence. I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee in the Ohio State Archaeology Building when Dr. Mara Ellison dropped a folder on my desk. It landed with the weight of a verdict. "Pack your gear, Daniel," she said. "We're going to Chillicothe." I blinked. "The Hopewell Cultural Site?" "Adjacent land," she corrected. "Private property. Newly purchased. The owner wants a full survey before he breaks ground." "Breaks ground for what?" "A museum," she said. "He wants to build a museum on Adena period land." I stared at her. "That's bold." "It's stupid," she said, "but he's paying for a full academic team, and if we don't take the contract, someone less qualified will." I opened the folder. Inside were aerial photos of the forested ridge, a cluster of low earthen rises, and a hand-drawn map marking 3 unregistered mounds. "Uncatalogued?" I asked. "Completely," she said. "No state records, no surveys, no excavations, nothing." That alone was strange. Ohio's mound sites were mapped obsessively by antiquarians in the 1800s. Finding 3 untouched ones like this was like discovering a new pyramid in Giza. "Who found them?" I asked. "The landowner's son," she said. "He was hiking the ridge, thought they were just hills. Then he found this." She slid a second photo across the desk. It showed a stone slab half buried in soil, carved with spiral patterns. Not Hopewell, not Adena. Something older. Something wrong? My stomach tightened. "When do we leave?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning," she said. "And Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Don't mention the giant skeleton stories." I laughed. I wasn't planning to. She didn't laugh back. We arrived in Chillicothe under a sky the color of wet slate. The landowner, a broad-shouldered man named Caleb Rourke, met us at the gate. "Glad you're here," he said, shaking hands with too much force. "I want this land understood before I build anything. My son swears those mounds aren't natural." "How old is your son?" Mara asked. 17, Caleb said. "Smart kid, knows the woods better than anyone." He led us up a narrow ATV trail through dense oak and hickory. The forest was quiet. Even the cicadas seemed muted. After 20 minutes, the trees opened into a clearing. The mounds rose from the earth like a sleeping animal. 3 long rows, humps ranged in a crescent. Each was about 8 feet high, maybe 60 feet long. Their symmetry was unmistakable. "These are definitely man-made," Mara said. I walked the perimeter, brushing my hand over the soil. The ground felt warm. Not sun-warm, something deeper. "Where's the stone your son found?" I asked. Caleb pointed to the far mound. Over there, he pulled it out with his hands. We approached the spot. The slab lay half embedded on the slope, carved with spirals that twisted inward like a whirlpool. Not Hopewell, Mara murmured. Not any known Adena motive either. Could it be later, I asked. No, she said. This predates everything. A chill crawled up my spine. Let's set camp, she said. We start excavation at first light. We opened a trench on the smallest mound. The soil was compact, but uniform, classic mound construction. Beneath the top layer, we found charcoal flecks, burned bone fragments, and a few stone tools. All normal. Then, at a depth of 4 feet, my trowel hit something solid. Got something, I said. Mara knelt beside me. Together we brushed away the soil. A femur emerged. Long and too thick. Jesus, I whispered. Mara measured it. Her face went pale. 42 centimeters, she said. That's impossible. For a normal human, she said quietly. But this isn't normal. We kept digging. The rest of the skeleton came into view. Massive ribs, broad pelvis, and a skull with a pronounced brow ridge. The bones were human-shaped, but everything was scaled up. How tall would this person have been, I asked. 2.4 meters, she said. Maybe more. 8 feet? She didn't answer. Caleb hovered behind us. So, my son was right. We need to be cautious, Mara said. This could be pathological or ceremonial or... A crack echoed through the trees. We all froze. Another crack, like a branch snapping under weight. Probably a deer, Caleb said. But I'd heard deer. This was heavier. Much heavier. On the second day, we opened a trench on the central mound. The soil was looser here, as if disturbed more recently. At 3 feet down, we found another stone slab. This one was larger, carved with spirals that interlocked like gears. Help me lift it, Mara said. We wedged our crowbars beneath the slab and heaved. The stone shifted and a rush of cold air blasted upward, smelling of damp earth and something metallic. Subsurface chamber, I said. We lowered a flashlight into the opening. The beam illuminated a narrow shaft descending into darkness. The walls were lined with stacked stones, dry-laid, ancient, precise. Hopewell didn't build chambers like this, Mara said. No one in this region did, I said. We rigged a rope and descended one by one. The chamber was about 10 feet wide and 15 feet long. The air was cold enough to see our breath. And on the far wall, carved into the stone, was a mural. A mural of giants. Tall, broad-shouldered figures with elongated limbs, towering over smaller humans. Their eyes were hollow circles. Their hands were too long. Their proportions were wrong. At the bottom of the mural, smaller humans knelt in a line, heads bowed. Is this worship? I asked. Or subjugation, Mara said. Caleb swallowed hard. What the hell lived here? Before anyone could answer, the ground trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Something above us moved. Something heavy. We climbed out of the chamber fast. The forest was too silent again. Then we saw them. In the soft earth near the mound's base were footprints. Huge footprints. Each one nearly 20 inches long, with a deep heel impression and splayed toes. The stride length was enormous. These weren't here yesterday, I said. Mara crouched down beside them. They're fresh. Caleb's face drained of all color. No one else is on this land. No one, I said. The prints led into the trees. and the trees were bent. Not broken, bent, as if something tall had pushed through them. We're being watched, Mara said. I didn't argue. We set up motion cameras around the mounds. Infrared, thermal, the works. As night fell, fog rolled from the valley, thick and low. The forest vanished behind a wall of white. We gathered in the main tent, reviewing the day's findings. We need to contact the state archaeologist, Mara said. This is beyond a private survey. Caleb shook his head. Not yet. I want to know what's on my land before the government swoops in. This isn't about ownership, she said. This is about safety. A motion alarm beeped. Camera 3. The one facing the central mound. We pulled up the feed. At first, all we saw was fog. Then something moved. A shape. Tall, broad, walking on two legs. The figure passed in front of the camera just as a silhouette, but unmistakably humanoid. And enormous. The feed cut to static. Was that? Caleb began. Yes, Mara said. It was. Another alarm beeped. Camera 1, then 2, then camera 4. All going offline, one by one. Something was taking them out. We stepped outside. The fog swallowed everything beyond 10 feet. The air felt thick, heavy, and electric. A branch snapped to our left, another to our right. Something circled us. Back to the tent, Mara whispered. We moved slowly, trying not to make noise. Then the fog shifted. A silhouette emerged. It stood at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by mist. 8 feet tall, maybe more. Shoulders like boulders, arms too long, head tilted slightly as if studying us. I froze. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Not like an animal's, not reflective. More like bioluminescence. It took one step forward. The ground shook. Run, Mara said. We sprinted for the tent. Behind us, the thing roared a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in my bones. We dove inside and zipped the flaps. The roar echoed again, then silence. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, encircling the tent. Caleb clutched a rifle. If it comes in... It won't, Mara said. It's testing us. How do you know? Because it could have killed us already. The footsteps stopped, then retreated and vanished. We didn't sleep that night. At dawn, the fog lifted. The cameras were smashed, ripped from their mounts, and crushed. The footprints were everywhere, dozens of them, leading to the third mound. We're not opening that one, I said. We have to, Mara said. Whatever these things are, they're connected to the mounds. Caleb nodded. If something's living in there, I need to know. We began excavation. The soil was disturbed recently, as if something had dug its way out. At 3 feet down, we found claw marks in the dirt. At 5 feet, we found another tunnel. A tunnel big enough for something 8 feet tall to crawl through. A tunnel that led downward into darkness. Absolutely not, I said. We're going, Mara said. Caleb swallowed. I'll go first. We rigged lights and descended. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, larger than the first. The ceiling arched high above us, supported by stone pillars carved with spirals. And in the center of this chamber lay 3 stone sarcophagi. One was open, empty. The second one was cracked. The third one was sealed. Mara approached the sealed one. Help me with the lid. No, I said. We need to leave. Now. Daniel? Something came out of that first one. Something alive. She hesitated. Then the ground trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. A roar echoed through the chamber. Not from the tunnel, but from behind the sarcophagi. A shape rose from the shadows, taller than the one we saw last night. 9 feet, maybe 10. Its skin was pale, stretched tight over powerful muscles. Its limbs were long, almost simian. Its face was human-shaped but elongated, with deep-set eyes that glowed faintly. It stared at us. Then it spoke. Not words, a low, rhythmic clicking. The same clicking we'd heard in the chamber walls. Communication? Calling? Another roar answered from the tunnel. Then another, and another. They're waking up, Mara whispered. The giant stepped forward. Caleb raised his rifle. Don't, Mara hissed. He fired. The bullet hit the giant's shoulder. It barely even flinched. Then it moved. It was fast. Too damn fast. It grabbed Caleb by the chest and lifted him off the ground. He screamed, kicked, punched, but the giant just squeezed. And Caleb went silent. It dropped him like a broken toy. Run, Mara shouted. We sprinted towards the tunnel. Behind us, the giants roared. The chamber shook, stone cracked, something collapsed. We crawled through the tunnel as the giants thundered behind us. One reached in, its arm stretching impossibly far, fingers brushing my boot. I kicked free. We burst into the daylight. The mound behind us collapsed inward, sending a cloud of dust straight into the air. The giants didn't emerge. Not yet. We ran for the trucks. The forest exploded with movement, trees shaking, branches snapping, roars echoing from every direction. They're surrounding us, I shouted. Keep moving, Mara yelled. We reached the clearing. The trucks were overturned, smashed, torn apart. They didn't want us leaving, Mara said. A roar shook the air. The tall one stepped from the trees. Then another and another. 3 giants, all watching us. Not attacking. Not yet. What do they want? I whispered. Mara stared at the mounds. At night, they came out, she said. During the day, they stay underground. So? So they're nocturnal. The sun was rising. Slowly. The giant shifted uneasy. One step back into the shade. Another shielded his eyes. They're waiting for the sun to go down, Mara said. They're patient. We're dead, I said. Not yet. She grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the ridge. There's a ranger station 2 miles east, she said. If we reach open ground, they won't follow. We ran. The giants roared behind us, but they didn't give chase. Not in daylight. Not yet. We hiked fast, stumbling over roots and rocks. The forest thinned. The sun climbed higher. But the feeling of being watched never left. Every so often, I saw movement in the shadows. Tall shapes pacing us from a distance, staying just out of the light. They're hurting us, I said. I know, Mara followed. Why? Because they don't want us going west. Why not? She stopped. We were standing on a ridge overlooking the valley. Below us, hidden by trees, were dozens of mounds. Not 3, dozens, maybe more. A whole necropolis. A whole civilization. Oh my God, I whispered. They weren't isolated, Mara said. They were people. And they're still here. She nodded. We need to warn someone, I said. We will, she said, if we survive. The forest opened into a meadow. Sunlight poured over us. We ran. Halfway across the field, a roar split the air. I turned. One of the giants stood at the tree line, trembling in the sunlight, skin blistering. It wanted to chase us. It wanted to kill us. But it couldn't. Not in the light. It roared again, furious, and retreated into the shadows. We kept running. The ranger station came into view, a squat building with a radio tower. We made it, I said. Mara didn't answer. She collapsed. I caught her before she hit the ground. Her shirt was soaked with blood. When? I whispered. In the tunnel, she said weakly. One of them grabbed me. Why didn't you say anything? Because you needed to run. I carried her the last 100 yards. Inside the station, I found a first aid kit, a radio, and a phone. None of them worked. The wires were cut. The power was dead. The giants had been here, preparing, planning. Mara's breathing slowed. Daniel, she whispered, I'm here. Don't let them bury this. I won't. Promise me. I promise. She exhaled and didn't inhale again. I sat with her until sunset. When the last light faded, the forest came alive. Roars echoed across the valley. Footsteps shook the ground. They were coming. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. I barricaded the doors, loaded Caleb's rifle, and prepared to die. But the giants didn't attack. They surrounded the station, watching, waiting, communicating in low clicks. Then, slowly, they retreated, back towards the mounds, back towards their dead, back underground, as if satisfied, as if they had protected their secret, for now. I made it out the next morning. A hiker found me on the road, delirious, dehydrated, carrying Mara's notebook. The authorities questioned me. I told them everything. They didn't believe a word. The mounds were sealed off, declared unsafe, scheduled for stabilization. No excavation allowed. No access granted. The official report said Caleb died of a cave-in. Mara died of exposure. I was traumatized and confused. Case closed. But I know what I saw. I know what lives beneath the hills and the mounds. I know what sleeps down there. And I know this. They are not extinct. They are not myths. They are not gone. They are waiting. And one day, when the sun goes down and the earth trembles, the spirals will open again. And they will rise. If you enjoyed tonight's story, please remember to hit that like button or leave a comment. And if you want to hear more from this channel and more stories that we've got written, please remember to hit that subscribe button. It'd mean a lot to us. Thank you, and have a great night.